hello everyone, welcome back to the DCAP. Now today we're back on to a college basketball video, and we have a start bench cut like we did towards the beginning of the DCAP was created. We did an NBA start bench cut, but this time we're going to be doing a college edition, and we have a very special guest again, MSU alumni Rosie Fish. How you doing, Rosie?
Great. How are you doing?
I'm doing good.
Good.
So
let's get on with this.
Yeah, let's get on with this. So for the first one, it's start bench cut. We're going to be starting with the 2020 season and then kind of working our way down and then doing some all-time college players and then some of the great coaches. For the first one, we have Marcus Howard, Miles Powell, and Peyton Pritchard. Who are you starting?
I'm going to start Marcus Howard from Marquette.
Okay, that's same here. Marcus Howard, this season he was amazing, averaging 28 points,
Right.
3 rebounds and 3.5 assists. 3.5 rebounds and 3 assists.
Yeah, and he also had 51 points in one game.
Yeah.
Which was, I didn't see the game, but that must have been pretty awesome.
Without Marcus Howard, Marquette would have been one of the worst in the Big East. So moving on to the bench, I benched Peyton Pritchard.
I also benched Peyton Pritchard from Oregon.
So Peyton Pritchard averaged 20.5 points, 5.5 assists, and 4 rebounds. And obviously that means we're both cutting Miles Powell, who averaged about the same, 21 points, but less assists at 3 and less rebounds at 4.
All three of them had a 40% field goal shooting average, which was very good for all three of them.
Yeah, especially because they're shooting it so many times as they are the leaders of their team.
Mm-hmm.
But I picked Peyton Pritchard because he didn't have as much help as Miles Powell. Miles Powell, that Seton Hall team was great. Obviously, was centered around Powell, but he also had some great players alongside him. Maybe not great, but Peyton Pritchard, just a great player, and I'm going to bench him.
Well, and also Peyton Pritchard had more assists too.
Yeah.
For that position.
Yeah, he spread the ball better.
Makes it more important.
Mm-hmm. So for that one, we're both starting Marcus Howard, benching Peyton Pritchard, and cutting Miles Powell. Moving on to the second one, we have Devin Dotson, Cassius Winston, and Jared Butler. I'm going to start Devin Dotson. I am a big Michigan State fan, so it hurts me to say this, but Devin Dotson was on a better team than Michigan State. Michigan State didn't really live up to the hype. They didn't, as they were the number one seed preseason number one team. But Kansas ended up being the number one team going into the tournament. So Devin Dotson was the leader of that team, averaging 18 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists. So I definitely had to go with him.
Okay. So who did you bench?
I benched Cassius.
Okay. Cassius, if you go with the 2019-20 season, at the beginning of the season, he lost his brother to suicide, which I think brought him down a little bit. He wasn't focused on basketball, but as the season progressed, I saw him improve a lot.
Yeah, that's true. And as the season progressed, that's when Michigan State got to be an elite team. But we're both benching Jared Butler. He did lead Baylor to have a great season, a historic season for the Bears, but just his individual performance wasn't really up to caliber with Dotson and Winston, as he only averaged 16 points, 3 assists, and 3 rebounds.
I agree.
So we have a difference there, but all three of those players are great and led their team to have great seasons. And now moving on to the third, our last 2019 to 2020 season players, we have Obi Toppin, Luka Garza, and Udoka Azubuike. Who'd you start?
I started Luka Garza because I got to see him play a lot because he was in the Big Ten. He averaged 9.8 rebounds, and his shooting percentage was 54%.
Wow, yeah.
And he averaged 23.9 points a game. So he was also Big Ten Player of the Year.
Yeah, so do you think Luka should have won National Player of the Year?
Yeah, and that was funny because Obi Toppin won that.
Yeah, and...
he won the Wooden Award.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I was surprised at that, but I still went with Luke Garza.
Luka Garza probably had the better individual season, but because Obi Toppin's team was better, arguably the best team in America this year, I mean, depending on how you see it, that I had to go with Obi. He also had a great season, averaging 20 points, 7.5 rebounds, and 2 assists. So they definitely were, I'd say, the 2 best players last year. You really can't take either one. I went with Obi Toppin. She went with Luka Garza. But we both did bench Udoka Azubuike, who was more of a second option on his team. He was great, but he wasn't really that caliber.
He didn't have, for being 7 foot, he only had 1 assist a game, which is not the big deal for being that big. But he only averaged 13.7 points a game. So,
yeah.
And you look at Toppin and Luka Garza.
They're both averaging north of 20. Yeah. So another difference there, but Obi Toppin, Luka Garza, you can take either one. But Udoka Azubuike definitely, I don't think, is on the same caliber. But all 3 great players once again. Now moving on to the fourth start bench cut, and we have Zion Williamson, Ethan Happ, and Grant Williams. And this is from last season or 2 seasons ago, whichever you want to say it. But who'd you start?
I started again a Big Ten player because I got to watch him play, and his shooting percentage was great. Not so much on assists, but he was better than Grant Williams on assists. He averaged 17.3 a game, whereas Grant Williams 18.8. But I did start Ethan Happ over Zion or Grant Williams.
I started Grant Williams. He was on a great team, one of the best teams, one of the great best teams that year in Tennessee. He averaged 19 points, 7.5 rebounds, a dominating player, and I had to start him as he also led a Tennessee team to the Sweet 16, where they did lose to Purdue. Shout out to Aaron Wheeler, who we interviewed last video, and he was on that team. But he still made it, and that was a great game, so I had to start Grant Williams. And then I had to bench Zion Williamson, meaning I am cutting Ethan Happ, which was hard. But Wisconsin lost in the first round of of March Madness that year to the 12-seeded Oregon. He did have a great year, but I had to go with Zion as he did propel his team farther in the tournament, and he had a great season, averaging 23 points and 9 rebounds. So I start Grant Williams, bench Zion, and cut Ethan Happ. What about you?
Zion Williamson, for being there just 1 year, was a beast. There's no 2 ways about it. 22.6 points per game. Assists, not that great, but then that's not his position. But I started Ethan Happ, benched Zion, and cut Grant Williams, which you felt very strongly that maybe he was the best of the 3. But that was a hard one.
Yeah, you're making me look bad because you're going into 22 point you're going into the tenths, and I'm just rounding. But
that's okay.
Then again, all 3 players are great. So let's move on to the next one. I feel like I'm saying that a lot, but let's move on to the next one with R.J. Barrett, Carson Edwards, and John Morant. This one is 3 of the best guards that year, maybe the 3 best guards. Actually, Carson Edwards was probably the best guard, or not Carson Edwards. Cassius Winston definitely would be in that group from that year. But R.J. Barrett, Carson Edwards, and John Morant. I started Carson Edwards, a Big Ten player. He averaged 24 points, 3 assists, 4 assists and 3 rebounds. And he led the Purdue to an elite 8 in a great regular season. So I had to start Carson, and I benched John Morant, 24.5 points and 10 assists. Those are just great numbers from John Morant. And it was hard between John Morant and R.J. Barrett. They both were great players on their team. They both led their team to at least win 1 game in the tournament. R.J. Barrett led his team to the Elite 8. But that's the thing. R.J. Barrett, I wouldn't say led his team, as he did have Zion. So that is why I'm going to be benching John Morant and cutting R.J. Barrett.
And I have to agree, Carson Edwards is the starter there. He was the top shooting guard in 2018. 40 points in 1 game in 2018. And I benched Jay Morant simply because he was the assist leader in 2019, the NCAA assist leader. You can't underestimate that. So I did bench R.J. Barrett, even though he was a good player at Duke.
No, you cut RJ.
I cut R.J. He was a great player at Duke, but I don't see how he compared with the other two. So
Yeah. Now moving on to the next one, we're moving into the historic players. We have Lou Alcindor or Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Shaquille O'Neal, and Bill Walton. Who did you start?
I started Lou Alcindor.
Yeah,
he
gotta
led
agree with that.
UCLA to 3 national titles in a row. I benched Shaq. This was a hard one because the other one was Bill Walton, who had 2 national champions with UCLA. But then when we get further down, we'll find out that John Wooden, he was instrumental in bringing UCLA to the echelon of great colleges. So I started Lou Alcindor, benched Shaq, and cut Bill Walton.
I have to agree that Lou Alcindor has to start. He is, I would say in most people's mind, the greatest college basketball player of all time.
At his position.
No, I would say all time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I would definitely say all time.
Okay, good.
26 points, 15.5 rebounds throughout his career. He went 3 for 3 for championships. So I think I have to start him. And I'm actually going to defer and bench Bill Walton because of those 2 championships, as you said. Shaquille O'Neal had better statistics, I would say, as he averaged more points per game during their careers. But Bill Walton had the 2 championships, and that pushes him over the edge for me, and it makes me want to bench him. So I am cutting Shaquille O'Neal. The bench and cut between these two was very hard, but Shaquille O'Neal didn't win a championship at LSU. He did average 21.5 points and 13.5 rebounds, but once again, the championships.
Shaq was almost a one-time player. I mean, he had no supporting cast there either.
That's true.
So he had to do most of it himself. And he was a beast. I mean, he was fun to watch.
Yeah.
But that's a close one between Bill Walton and Shaq.
That's definitely close. Now, moving on to the next one, we have another historic guard/small forward start bench cut, and we have Magic Johnson, Pistol Pete Maravich, and Larry Bird. Who are you going to start?
I'm going to start Magic Johnson.
Yeah, I agree.
Even though he only played 2 years at Michigan State, he still, he had a national championship, averaged 17.1 points a game, 7.9 assists. I also benched Pete Maravich, Pistol Pete, because he was the NCAA all-time scorer, and I think you need somebody that can score at every game, at every level. So I benched him, and then I cut Larry Bird, which was hard to do, but he had 30 points per game also, and 4.3 assists, but that's the way I went. And how did you go?
I started Magic Johnson as well. His stats did not match up with Pete Maravich and Larry Bird, but he led Michigan State to a championship. And as I expressed when talking about Bill Walton and Shaquille O'Neal, I love a winner on my team. So he has that one championship. Pistol Pete and Larry Bird don't. He beat Larry Bird in the championship game, so I think you kind of have to put Magic Johnson over Larry, as they both didn't have great supporting cast. Magic had Greg Kelser, who was great, but he was very nobody really talked about him, and he was great. But Magic Johnson had that championship. He did average 17 points, about 8 rebounds, about 8 assists. So I have to start him. I'm benching, differing from you, Larry Bird, who had 30 points in almost 30 points, or around 30 points, around 13 rebounds, But I put him ahead of Pete Maravich because he led his team to the championship, which Pete Maravich never did. He didn't win, but at least he did lead his team through March Madness to the championship, so I had to bench him. And I'm cutting Pete Maravich, which is crazy because I'm cutting a player that in college averaged around 44 points a game. When I was doing research and looked at Pete Maravich's college stats, and I saw around 44 points, I didn't really believe it, but
And you have to remember, that was only the 2-point shot, too.
Yeah.
Not the 3-point shot. Which is...
So it is crazy that I'm cutting Pete Maravich, but he didn't really win much in college, so I am starting Magic, benching Larry Bird, and cutting Pete Maravich. Now moving on to the last one of the day, a historic coaching start bench cut. We have John Wooden, Coach K, and Bobby Knight. Who are you starting?
I'm starting John Wooden. When you think of UCLA, you think of John Wooden, and even today, his book is widely read on his basic plays. He also was a wisdom person that spoke with knowledge to his players and to anybody that would listen to him. I benched Coach K because I did have Bobby Knight, but then I remember Bobby Knight didn't leave Indiana with a high regard from a lot of his fans. Number one, because of his temper. He got into a big squall with the Indiana University itself. And Coach K was more of Duke is where they are because of Coach K. I mean, that's a fact. So I guess I started John Wooden, I benched Coach K, and cut Bobby Knight.
Yeah, and that's the same for me. John Wooden's 7 championships, that is just an all-time number for an all-time great coach. My greatest coach of all time, I think, in most people's minds. My second greatest coach of all time, Coach K, he did have 5 championships, but I'd want to see maybe one more, and then I would say he might take over John Wooden. But with the new thing, maybe he pays players. Well, I would say Duke does, but we don't know if Coach K does. So that might hinder his reputation, but still a great coach. So I have Coach K on the bench, and I'm cutting Bobby Knight. 3 chips, but he did throw a chair at a player. He did have temper problems. He was a great coach, but he didn't win as much as the other 2, and just his players wouldn't like him as much as the other 2.
Exactly. Exactly.
So I'm as well starting John Wooden, benching Coach K, and cutting Bobby Knight. So that is going to be the last one. I hope everyone enjoyed this video. Comment down below who you would have started, who you would have benched, and who you would have cut. We might have had a little Big Ten/MSU bias, but I think we tried not to. Maybe not so much Rosie, but she started like 5 Big Ten players the first couple times. But I mean, the Big Ten does have great players: Cassius Winston, Luka Garza, Ethan Hatt, Carson Edwards. All great players when they played college basketball, 4 of the most dominating players in their year. I hope everyone enjoyed this video, and peace.